fellow Burnsians and friends. On behalf of Dumfries and Galloway Burns Association, I would like to welcome you all to our Browell ceremony, brought to you today by the magic of technology. For the past 75 years, our association has commemorated the death of Robert Burns by laying a wreath here at the Browell. As newly installed president, I was very much looking forward to my first official duty, which was to oversee the ceremony and social, which was planned for today, Wednesday the 22nd of July. However, sadly, COVID-19 has made this impossible to happen in the usual format due to the restrictions currently in place. Undaunted by this, a suggestion was made at a recent virtual AGM to record a video message to commemorate this important date in the Burns calendar. I'm delighted to say that the response from the region has been phenomenal, with every member club in Dumfries and Galloway represented, as well as some well-known Burnsians and local dignitaries. On this, the 224th anniversary of the death of Robert Burns, we join together as a region in these unprecedented times to celebrate his life and honour his death. Burns visited the Browell on the advice of his physician to bathe in the Solway, believing it to have healing properties. Sadly, this was not to be, and he died just a few days later on the 21st of July 1796 at the very young age of 37. Without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Bill Nolan, immediate past president of the Robert Burns World Federation, who will begin our message by giving his tribute to Robert Burns.
President Fiona, friends, cronies and Doonhamers. This time last year when I was president of the World Federation, I was unable to join you at the Browell because I was in the USA. I promised to join you this year and I'm happy to be part of this special event, which could be held in its usual format. But it speaks volumes for how much you treasure Robert Burns that you have created a virtual ceremony using 21st century technology to honour our 18th century poet. In the summer of 1796, the Clachan Inn at Brow in the parish of Rothville, stone's throw from the Solway, had a notable visitor who in medical advice had come to bathe in the Solway and take the mineral waters of the Browell. But neither the Brow waters nor the chilly Solway could have helped this 37-year-old visitor, for he already carried the signs and smell of death on his often damp and totally inappropriate clothing. That sickly individual was none other than Robert Burns, who had been advised by his doctor William Maxwell to take this possible cure as almost a last resort. Too impoverished to afford comfortable lodgings, Burns stayed at the Clachan Inn, in reality little more than a run-down bothy, with a clientele of mainly cattle drovers. He stayed there for almost 2 weeks before returning on the 18th of July to his Dumfries home. Helped there, courtesy of a friend, he literally crawled upstairs and into what would become his deathbed. For 3 days later, Robert Burns died in that upstairs room. In the direst of poverty, haunted by the threat of a debtor's prison, and fearful of who would look after Jean, his heavily pregnant wife and young family after he had passed on. Ironically, bearing in mind the old clay big in the Galloway in which he was born, with its thatched roof and crumbling walls, Burns spent most of the final weeks of his life in a similar, but even more run-down building, also with a thatched roof and crumbling walls. His personal circumstances had changed little in real terms. Despite the adulation that he had received as Scotia's Bard, and the recognition that he has been given since, not only nationally but also internationally. When Burns arrived in Brow on that early Sunday evening in July, he would have enjoyed much the same view that we have from there today. Criffel to the west against the setting sun. The northern hills of the English Lakeland to the south. The Solway with its odd tidal patterns and mud flats. And the allegedly curative waters of the Well and the chilly waters of the Firth itself. He was clearly physically weak, but his spirit was still strong when his friend Maria Riddell, also convalescing nearby, sent her carriage to bring him to her own temporary lodgings for supper. She was clearly shocked by his physical condition and signs of his failing health. When she wrote afterwards, "I was struck with his appearance on entering the room. The stamp of death was on his features." But ever the dramatist, Burns' opening remarks to her were, "Well, madam, do you have any commands for the next world?" Burns ate little and drank even less that evening, before Maria's carriage returned him to his own meagre lodgings, from where daily he truckled himself across the Merse, to stand fully clothed and up to the chest in the Solway's chilly waters. He made that painful and debilitating journey daily for almost the next 2 weeks, each time returning to lie in a bed borrowed from the innkeeper until his seawater-soaked clothing had dried on him. It's hard to imagine that any physician, particularly Dr. Maxwell, a radical who was close to Burns, would prescribe such treatment as a cure. But we have to tread carefully when applying today's knowledge and practices to what was a very different society in 18th century Scotland. Burns not only suffered physical illnesses, he also suffered mental anguish. Until recently, any discussions on that topic have been swept under the carpet. Even in 1781, during his time in Irvine, Surgeon Fleming had treated Burns with an odd mixture of herbs and potions for what today would be diagnosed as forms of depression and mental stress. This suffering is mirrored in his poetry from that period, for Burns had been composing dirges, laments and prayers for some time before writing Man Was Made to Mourn. We often castigate unfairly those early biographers like Dr. Curry, who wrote about Burns having died of excesses. I say unfairly quite deliberately, for some suggestions carried a ring of truth. But where his critics erred was wrongly identifying which excesses had shortened the life of Robert Burns. Robert Burns did die of excess. Yes, an excess of medical ignorance is a cure for what was diagnosed as flying gout, but in reality was endocarditis. He died of an excess of hard physical labour for most of his life working on heavy clay soils and badly drained land of poor quality. He died of an excess of travelling, on horseback and on foot in all sorts of weather, across Dumfries and Galloway as an exciseman. He died of an excess of stress and depression, often induced by a mounting fear of debt brought about by unscrupulous publishers and others withholding payments. In short, systematic poverty within an unfair society killed Robert Burns, just as it did tens of thousands of his contemporaries. And even today, in supposedly more enlightened times, poverty is still killing off many, both young and old, in a society that is far from being fair. Here in the Solway coast each July we recall Burns and his painful days of sickness and suffering, and contrasted to those happier times of fellowship and friendship that we enjoy each January. Here we recognise and remember Burns when he was at his lowest ebb, needing support in times of darkness and despair, loneliness and lassitude. By marking that awareness annually It is surely the true sign of love and respect that we can show to this dying man, whose memory today we rightly deem to be immortal. He'll hae misfortunes, great and small, but I hae heard to bend them all. He'll be a credit to us all, while I'll be proud of Robin. I am tonight proud and honoured to be invited to share that love and respect for Robert Burns with you here in Dumfries and Galloway. Thank you.
I will lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. At this time we remember Robert Burns. We remember especially his great gift as a poet, for the way he inspired people over many generations and in many countries. We give thanks for his love of nature, his passion for social justice, and his desire and belief in a common humanity. At this time, when many people are sad and wondering what the future brings, we remember before God all those who have died because of the pandemic, especially remembering those who have given their lives in the service of others. We pray for all those who have been bereaved and suffered in any way. And we pray at this time for those who work in the National Health Service, in care homes, and in the many services that are bringing help to our community and to society at large. And now may the love of God the Father enfold you. May the strength of the risen Christ inspire you. And may the fire of God's Holy Spirit give you hope and peace. And the blessing of God be with you all and with all whom you love this day and always. Amen.